On my parents' luxury cruise boat, my 5-year-old son and I were suddenly shoved from behind. I spun around, and my mother calmly whispered, "You'll vanish as if you never existed." My wife grinned. "Farewell, worthless ones." Clutching my son, I plunged into the sea. Hours later, when they arrived home, their screams rippled through the house. What if the person you vowed to spend your life with, the mother of your child, was meticulously planning your death? Not just for money, but to erase you from existence? This isn't some twisted movie plot. This was my terrifying reality, a reality born from the deepest, most chilling betrayal imaginable. My life, or what I thought was my life, began to unravel on a crisp Boston evening. The salt air, usually a comforting embrace, tasted like a bitter premonition as I walked through the door of our waterfront mansion, completely oblivious to the viper I'd welcomed into my home. You see, I'm Ethan Vance. And for 15 years in naval intelligence, I lived by one rule: never trust easily. I was trained to see every angle, anticipate betrayal, and always have a contingency plan. But 4 years ago, at a charity gala in Boston, something shifted. Her name was Chloe Hayes. And those hazel eyes? They held a warmth that, against all my training, melted the ice around my heart. For the first time in forever, I let my guard down. Our courtship was a whirlwind. 6 months later, we were married in a small, intimate ceremony on the New England coast. A year after that, our son Leo was born. "He has your eyes," Chloe had whispered in the hospital room, a calculating glint I dismissed as new motherhood. God, I wish I hadn't. When I decided to leave naval intelligence for private security consulting, Chloe was my biggest cheerleader. My new venture, Sentinel Security Solutions, exploded. High-profile clients, lucrative government contracts, a reputation for absolute discretion. We were wildly successful. By Leo's 4th birthday, my fortune was pushing north of $30 million. And that, my friends, is when Eleanor Hayes, Chloe's mother, arrived. Like a moth to a flame. Eleanor, a retired psychiatrist with tastes as expensive as her opinions, had initially disapproved of me, seeing me as beneath her daughter. But with the money pouring in, she became a permanent fixture in our waterfront mansion. Families should stick together, she'd purr, refilling her crystal glass with imported scotch. Blood is thicker than water. I never fully trusted Eleanor, but I tolerated her for Chloe's sake. What I didn't realize then, what I couldn't realize, was that mother and daughter shared more than genes. They shared a chilling capacity for deception that would have made my intelligence trainers proud. One afternoon, in my home office overlooking Boston Harbor, I was reviewing quarterly reports when my private phone buzzed. It was a text from David Stone, my former handler, and one of the few people left in the world I genuinely trusted. The message was terse. Package delivered. Contents concerning. Meet tonight. I deleted it instantly, then checked my security monitors. Leo was playing in the garden with Nadia, his nanny. Chloe was in the master bedroom on a call. Eleanor was in the guest house. All normal. Yet, a cold knot began to tighten in my gut. Something felt profoundly off. That evening, I told Chloe I had a business emergency. "Take all the time you need, darling," she cooed, kissing me softly. "Leo and I will be just fine." "Actually," I replied, watching her carefully, "I thought Leo might enjoy coming with me. We could stop for ice cream on the way back." A flash. Was it irritation? Fear? Crossed her face before her practiced smile snapped back into place. "Of course, darling. Mother, and I will just have a girls' night." In a nondescript diner outside the city, David slid a manila envelope across the table while Leo, oblivious, devoured his chocolate sundae. "Surveillance photos," David explained quietly. "Started as routine background on a potential client. Then things got interesting." My blood ran cold as I flipped through the images. Chloe, entering an upscale hotel. Chloe, in deep conversation with a man I didn't recognize. Chloe and that man kissing passionately in an elevator. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm, barely above a whisper. "Marcus Thorne," David replied. Old money from Philadelphia. On paper, he runs a charitable foundation. In reality, it's a sophisticated money laundering operation. We've had eyes on him for years. The final photo in the stack hit me like a physical blow. Chloe, Marcus, and Eleanor, all three of them laughing together on the deck of a yacht, their faces alight with a dark, shared camaraderie. There's more, David continued, his voice grim. Financial analysis shows unusual patterns in your accounts. Small amounts redirected through shell companies. Nearly untraceable. How much? About 3 million so far. And Ethan, David hesitated, his gaze locking with mine. There's chatter about something bigger in the works. Very concerning chatter. On the drive home, I watched Leo in the rearview mirror. He was falling asleep, clutching his favorite stuffed whale. Utterly innocent. I had never killed anyone outside of sanctioned operations. But looking at my son, at the pure, untainted joy he represented, I knew, with an icy certainty, that I would do anything to protect him. Instead of heading home, I drove to my office building. In the basement, behind a biometric lock only I could access, was a room. Inside were identities, passports, cash, weapons, remnants of my former life. Insurance for scenarios I had hoped would never materialize. Now, it seemed they would. Chapter 2. The trap is set for the next 2 weeks. I transformed into the perfect husband. I brought Chloe flowers, arranged romantic date nights, and surprised her with expensive jewelry. I told her business was booming and suggested we celebrate with a weekend cruise on our yacht, the Siren's Call. The three of us should go. Chloe suggested over dinner, her eyes sparkling. You, me, and Leo, I added, watching her reaction carefully. And your mother, of course. She loves being on the water. Chloe's hesitation was almost imperceptible, a fleeting shadow. Of course, darling. Mother would absolutely love that. In my hidden study, I pored over the evidence David had gathered. Marcus Thorne. His connections stretched to Russian oligarchs and South American cartels. The money laundering operation was sophisticated, yes, but the real concern was a series of encrypted messages hinting at a planned removal and asset acquisition. I was the removal. My company and my fortune were the assets. I installed microscopic cameras throughout the house and yacht, tapped phones, and placed tracking devices in all our vehicles. What I discovered confirmed my very worst fears. Chloe and Eleanor had been plotting with Marcus for over a year. He's too cautious, Chloe told Marcus during a clandestine hotel meeting, her voice laced with frustration. Everything is locked down tight. The only way to access the bulk of his fortune is through his death. The prenup? Marcus asked, ever practical. Ironclad. Eleanor interjected with a cold, dry laugh. But with him gone and Chloe as Leo's guardian, she controls everything until the boy turns 25. More than enough time. The plan needs to be perfect, Marcus insisted. No evidence, no suspicion. A tragic accident at sea. A cold rage, unlike anything I'd ever known, began to build inside me as I watched them discuss my murder so casually, so dispassionately. My own death sentence decided over cocktails. I began preparing countermeasures, creating blind spots in my surveillance where they would think themselves unobserved, yet every word they spoke was captured. 3 days before the planned cruise, I took Leo to see Dr. Julian Grant, a trusted friend and medical professional. I need to know if he's mine, I said bluntly, after Leo had gone to play in the adjacent room. Julian's expression was grim. May I ask why you suspect otherwise? Just run the test, I replied, my voice hard. Urgent and confidential. The next day, Julian called with the results. DNA confirms it, Ethan. Leo is definitely your biological son. Relief, a profound, soul-deep relief, flooded through me. It was followed almost immediately by a renewed, hardened determination. They wouldn't just be attempting to kill me. They would be trying to steal my son. On the eve of the cruise, I asked Nadia, Leo's nanny, to come to my office. I have always valued your discretion and loyalty, I told the young woman, looking into her steady eyes. Now I need both more than ever. Nadia had been with us since Leo was born. I had personally selected her, a former military nurse with training in combat situations. Qualifications Chloe had never questioned. "Whatever you need, Mr. Vance," Nadia replied, her voice calm and resolute. I handed her a thick envelope. "If anything happens to me, follow these instructions exactly. Leo's life may depend on it." That night, as Chloe slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling. The woman I had loved, or thought I had loved, was planning my murder. The mother of my child wanted me erased from existence. The depth of the betrayal was almost incomprehensible. But I had survived in a world where trust was a liability. I hadn't just been trained to detect betrayal. I'd been trained to turn it against my enemies. They thought I was the prey. They were wrong. Chapter 3. The plunge. The morning of the cruise dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for sailing or for murder. I loaded the final supplies onto the siren's call while Chloe supervised Leo's packing. Eleanor arrived with enough luggage for a month-long voyage, though we were only planning to be out for the weekend. "I like to be prepared," she explained with a tight, knowing smile. As we pulled away from the marina, I noticed a sleek black sedan in the parking lot. Marcus Thorne, watching from a distance. I pretended not to see, acting the part of the oblivious, unsuspecting husband. Out on the open water, I played the role perfectly. Attentive father, loving husband, tolerant son-in-law. I mixed drinks, prepared lunch, and took Leo to the bow to watch for dolphins. "They're magical creatures," I told my son, holding him tight. "They know things about the sea that humans can never understand." "Like what, Daddy?" Leo asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "Like how to survive when everything seems hopeless." By late afternoon, we were 20 miles offshore. I had deliberately disabled the boat's tracking systems and emergency beacon, a fact I knew Chloe had noted with quiet satisfaction. "Let's have champagne," Chloe suggested as the sun began to dip below the horizon. "To celebrate our beautiful family." I poured drinks for the adults and juice for Leo. I pretended to sip my champagne, watching Chloe and Eleanor exchange subtle glances. "Why don't you show Leo that trick with the dolphins?" Chloe suggested, her voice falsely sweet. "The one where you splash the water to call them?" I nodded, taking Leo's hand. "Let's go to the rear deck. Better visibility there." As we stood at the stern, splashing water and laughing, I felt, rather than saw, Chloe and Eleanor approaching from behind. I continued playing with Leo, seemingly oblivious to the encroaching danger. The push. When it came, it was forceful, meant to send both me and Leo over the railing into the churning wake of the yacht. But I had been ready. As I fell, hands on my back, I twisted, pulling Leo close to my chest and grabbing the railing with my free hand. The momentum carried us over. But instead of plunging helplessly into the sea, I controlled our fall, using my body to shield Leo from impact. Just before we hit the water, I heard Eleanor's cold, triumphant voice, "You'll be erased like you never existed." And Chloe's chilling whisper, "Goodbye, useless ones." The Atlantic in September was cold enough to kill within hours. But I had prepared for this. I was wearing a thin wetsuit under my clothes, and I had a waterproof pouch secured to my ankle. As we surfaced, I quickly deployed a compact, inflatable float collar around Leo's neck. "Hold tight, buddy," I whispered to my terrified son. "Daddy's got you. Remember our secret game? The one where we pretend to be invisible?" Leo nodded, shivering. "We're going to play that now." From above, Chloe and Eleanor would see only empty water. The yacht continued forward, gradually shrinking into the distance. "Aren't they coming back?" Leo asked, his voice trembling, despite the float keeping him above water. "No, buddy," I said, pulling him closer. "But we don't need them to." I removed the waterproof pouch, extracting a compact GPS transmitter. I activated it with a 3-digit code. Help is already on the way. 40 minutes later, as hypothermia began to threaten, a sleek speedboat approached. David Stone cut the engine, helping me and Leo aboard. "Right on schedule," David noted grimly. "They didn't even circle back to check." "They thought they didn't need to," I replied, wrapping Leo in thermal blankets. The yacht will dock at the marina around 10 p.m., David said. From there, they'll report you both missing tomorrow morning. Enough time lag to ensure no real search could find you alive. I nodded, hugging my confused son close. Leo, this is my good friend David. We need to stay with him for a while, okay? It's part of our invisible game. As the speedboat headed not toward Boston, but to a private dock in a secluded cove, I looked out at the darkening horizon. The game had only just begun. Chapter 4. Ghosts in the Shadows. The safe house was a rustic cabin nestled deep in the woods of coastal Maine, far from curious eyes and digital footprints. I'd purchased it years ago under a shell corporation, one of several properties unknown to Chloe or anyone else. How long do we stay here, Daddy? Leo asked on our third morning, as I prepared a simple breakfast of eggs and toast. Not too long, buddy. Just until I finish my special work project. Nadia arrived that afternoon, bringing supplies and a familiar toy box for Leo. The boy ran to her, excited to see a friendly face amidst this strange new world. Everything in place? I asked her quietly, as Leo eagerly explored the toys. Yes, sir. The surveillance is active. They reported you both missing yesterday morning, as expected. Mrs. Hayes gave a very convincing performance for the Coast Guard. Hysterical with grief. She paused. And the other matter handled? Dr. Grant has prepared everything according to your specifications. I nodded, my expression grave. You understand what happens next? I do, Nadia replied, her gaze firm. And I'm prepared. Leo will be safe with me. That evening, after Leo was asleep, David and I reviewed the surveillance footage from the Hayes mansion. Chloe sat in the living room, accepting condolences from friends, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor hovered nearby, the perfect image of a grieving grandmother. Oscar-worthy performances, David muttered, shaking his head. Later, Marcus Thorne arrived, ostensibly as a family friend offering support. The cameras captured their conversation in the kitchen, voices low. The Coast Guard is expanding the search area tomorrow, Chloe said, dabbing her eyes. But they've already told me privately that survival was impossible. The water temperature, the distance from shore. How long until it's official? Marcus pressed. A week, maybe 2, before they're declared presumed dead. Then the probate process begins. And the company? Marcus continued, his eyes glinting. Majority ownership transfers to me as Leo's guardian. The board can't block it. It's in the corporate bylaws. I watched with a cold, detached intensity. The woman who had shared my bed for 5 years, who had given birth to my son, was now calculating the hours until my death could be legally established. What's your plan? David asked, his voice tight, as the video feed continued. They think they're hunters, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. I'm going to show them what it means to be hunted. Over the next week, I methodically prepared my counterattack. Using David's connections and my own considerable resources, I built a comprehensive profile of Marcus Thorne's criminal enterprise, shell companies, money laundering routes, corrupt officials, all meticulously documented. This is enough to put him away for decades, David observed, reviewing the evidence. Prison is too good for him, I replied. I want him destroyed, not just incarcerated. I then turned my attention to Chloe's past, uncovering secrets she had carefully concealed. Before meeting me, she had been involved in a series of calculated relationships with wealthy men, each ending when their usefulness expired. There were restraining orders that had been sealed, allegations of theft that had been settled privately. Eleanor's history revealed an even more disturbing pattern, one of enabling and coordinating her daughter's predatory behavior. The respected psychiatrist had used her professional insights to help Chloe identify and manipulate vulnerable targets. 10 days after our deaths, I received the call I'd been waiting for. The Coast Guard had officially suspended the search and rescue operation. The news channels reported the tragic story: successful businessman Ethan Vance and his young son presumed dead in boating accident. That evening, I sat with Leo on the cabin porch, watching the sunset paint the Maine sky in fiery hues. Daddy, are we still playing the invisible game? the boy asked, looking up at me. I pulled my son close. Yes, but not for much longer, buddy. Soon we'll play a new game. It's called Justice. The next morning, I left Leo in Nadia's capable hands and departed with David. Our destination, a private medical facility owned by Dr. Julian Grant. Everything is prepared, Julian assured us. But I must ask again. Are you certain about this? The psychological impact alone. I'm certain, I interrupted, my gaze unwavering. They've already killed me in the eyes of the world. Now I'll use that death to bring them down. The procedure took 6 hours. When it was complete, Ethan Vance no longer existed. In his place was Robert Caldwell, a man with different facial features, different fingerprints, and a completely legitimate identity. The changes are subtle enough to pass casual inspection, Julian explained, but significant enough to defeat facial recognition and fool those who knew you, especially since no one is looking for you alive. How long until I'm fully healed, Max? I asked, my new name feeling strange on my tongue. 2 weeks before the swelling completely subsides, a month before you should risk close contact with anyone who knew you before. I nodded. Perfect timing. Chapter 5. Shadows into Light. The funeral was a somber affair, attended by Boston's elite. Chloe Hayes, elegant in black, accepted condolences with dignified grief. Eleanor stood beside her, a supportive arm around her daughter's waist. In the front row, Marcus Thorne sat, playing the role of a close family friend. Among the mourners, a nondescript man in sunglasses observed from a distance. Robert Caldwell, formerly Ethan Vance, watched his own funeral with a detached fascination. The twin caskets, one large, one small, were merely for show. The Coast Guard had recovered no bodies, but ceremony demanded closure. I noted with grim satisfaction how Chloe occasionally glanced at them, as if to reassure herself that her plan had succeeded. Following the funeral, the mourners gathered at the Hayes mansion. Robert slipped inside, another anonymous face in the crowd of Boston's wealthy and connected. He overheard snippets of conversation. Such a tragedy. She's so strong. The company will need strong leadership now. Robert approached Marcus Thorne, introducing himself as a potential investor. Marcus, always alert to financial opportunities, engaged eagerly. My portfolio is diverse, Robert explained, but I'm looking for something with more creative financial structures. Marcus's eyes lit with the recognition of a kindred spirit. Perhaps we should discuss this further in private. My foundation is always seeking like-minded partners. I'd like that, Robert replied, handing Marcus a business card. Call me when a mourning period feels less restrictive. That evening, from my hotel room, I watched the surveillance feeds from the Hayes mansion. The guests had departed, leaving Chloe, Eleanor, and Marcus alone. God, I thought they'd never leave, Chloe sighed, kicking off her heels and pouring a generous glass of whiskey. You played your part beautifully, Marcus told her, loosening his tie. The grieving widow, devastated but dignified. Simply perfect. Eleanor raised her glass. To new beginnings. And to Ethan and Leo Vance. May they rest in peace at the bottom of the Atlantic. Their laughter echoed through the empty house, cutting through me like a knife. I had known their betrayal was cold and calculated, but seeing their celebration of my death, and worse, my son's death, ignited something primal within me. Robert. David's voice came through the secure line. The final preparations are in place. Nadia and Leo arrived safely at the secondary location. Good, Robert replied, my eyes never leaving the surveillance feed. It's time for Phase 2. Over the next 2 weeks, Robert Caldwell became Marcus Thorne's new best friend. We met for drinks, discussed investment opportunities, and shared increasingly sensitive information about Marcus's charitable foundation. Meanwhile, through David's connections, I made strategic moves in the financial markets, subtly undermining Sentinel Security Solutions stock value, making the company appear vulnerable just as Chloe was assuming control. The board is getting nervous, David reported after a clandestine meeting with a Sentinel executive. Your death created instability, and now these market fluctuations, they're pushing for a quick sale to stabilize the situation. And let me guess, I said, a cold smile forming. Marcus has positioned himself as the ideal buyer through a consortium of investors. Yes, David confirmed. The offer comes tomorrow. Right on schedule. 2 days later, Robert met Marcus at an exclusive club in downtown Boston. Marcus was practically glowing with triumph. The deal is all but done, he boasted over an aged scotch. Sentinel will be mine by the end of the month. Chloe played her part perfectly. Just enough resistance to appear proper, but ultimately persuaded that selling is the best option. Quite the team you two make, Robert observed, swirling his drink. Known each other long? We have history, Marcus replied with a smirk. Let's just say Chloe has always had excellent taste in men and in opportunities. And her mother? I prodded. What does she fit in? Eleanor, the mastermind in many ways. She sees the angles, identifies the targets. A brilliant woman, if somewhat terrifying. Marcus laughed. Almost feel sorry for Ethan Vance. The poor bastard never stood a chance. Robert raised his glass in a toast. To those who never see the knife coming. That night, Robert initiated the next phase of his plan. Using access codes provided by David, he transferred incriminating financial records from Marcus's foundation to a secure server. These records detailed money laundering operations, connections to organized crime, and most damning, the conspiracy to murder Ethan and Leo Vance. The evidence is comprehensive. David confirmed after reviewing the files. But will it be enough? People like Marcus have escaped justice before. This isn't about justice, Robert replied, my voice hard. It's about vengeance. The following day, Robert arranged a private dinner with Marcus at an upscale restaurant. As they discussed the finalization of the Sentinel acquisition, Robert slipped a small flash drive across the table. What's this? Marcus asked, picking it up. Insurance, Robert replied. I've been doing some research on your foundation. Fascinating financial architecture. Marcus's expression hardened. I'm not sure I understand. Let me be clear, then, I said, leaning in slightly. I know everything. The money laundering, the criminal connections, and most interestingly, your involvement in the deaths of Ethan and Leo Vance. Marcus's hand moved toward his jacket, but Robert shook his head slightly. Don't. My associate at the bar has been recording our conversation. Any aggressive move would be inadvisable. What do you want? Marcus asked, his voice barely controlled, a flicker of desperation in his eyes. Initially, $100 million. Consider it an entry fee for my silence. That's absurd. I don't have that kind of liquid capital. Robert smiled coldly. You will, once the Sentinel acquisition is complete. You have 24 hours to decide. As Robert left the restaurant, I could feel Marcus's eyes boring into my back. The trap was set, the bait taken. Now the real game could begin. Chapter 6. The depth of deceit. Marcus Thorne was not a man accustomed to being threatened. By midnight, he had assembled his inner circle. Chloe, Eleanor, and 2 trusted associates with connections to less legitimate enterprises. Who the hell is Robert Caldwell? Marcus demanded, pacing Chloe's living room. I've had my people digging all night. His background checks out, but it's too perfect. Something's not right. Maybe he's law enforcement? Chloe suggested, her composure cracking for the first time since the accident. No, cops don't ask for payoffs, Eleanor snapped. This is something else. From his hotel room, Robert watched their panic through the hidden cameras. The sight of Chloe's fear gave him a satisfaction he hadn't anticipated. The next morning, Robert received a text from Marcus. Deal accepted. Meet tonight to discuss terms. The meeting location was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Boston. Marcus's choice, predictably cliché. Robert arrived early, carefully examining the building's layout. As expected, Marcus had men positioned throughout. 2 at the main entrance, 1 on the catwalk above, another near a side exit. Robert entered at precisely the appointed time, walking confidently into what Marcus clearly intended as an ambush. Mr. Caldwell. Marcus called from the center of the warehouse floor. I'm glad you could make it. Did you bring the initial payment? About that, Robert asked, approaching steadily. I've decided to propose an alternative arrangement. On cue, Marcus's men emerged from their positions, weapons drawn. Robert stopped, appearing surprised but not frightened. Is this really necessary? He asked calmly. I think it is, Marcus replied, a cruel smile spreading across his face. You see, I don't respond well to blackmail. It tends to encourage more of the same. A pity. I thought we could resolve this like businessmen. Marcus laughed harshly. Oh, this is business, Mr. Caldwell. My business. And the first rule is, eliminate threats permanently. Interesting philosophy, Robert commented. Ethan Vance might have agreed with you. Something in Robert's tone made Marcus pause. What do you know about Vance? He asked, a flicker of unease in his eyes. Everything, Robert replied, his voice changing subtly, losing the smooth cadence of Robert Caldwell and gaining the sharp edge of Ethan Vance. I know how you plotted with his wife and mother-in-law to kill him and his son for his money. I know you celebrated their deaths. And I know something you don't. And what's that? Marcus asked, his face now a mask of confusion and growing fear. Robert smiled. And for the first time, Marcus saw something chillingly familiar in his eyes. They didn't die. Before Marcus could process this, the warehouse plunged into darkness. The sounds that followed were precise and methodical. Grunts of pain, bodies falling, and finally, silence. When emergency lights flickered on, Marcus found himself alone with Robert, his men unconscious or restrained on the floor. Who are you? Marcus whispered, genuine terror in his voice. Robert stepped closer, allowing Marcus to really see his face. Despite the surgical alterations, something in the eyes, the cold, calculated rage, triggered recognition. No, Marcus breathed, stumbling backward. It's not possible. Disappointingly predictable. Robert, now fully Ethan, said softly. The abandoned warehouse, the armed thugs. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate every move you'd make? If you're going to kill me, just do it, Marcus said, attempting bravado. Kill you? No. Death is too quick, too merciful. Ethan circled Marcus slowly, a predator toying with his prey. I'm going to destroy you piece by piece. Everything you value, your reputation, your freedom, your foundation, your relationship with Chloe, all of it will be systematically dismantled. You can't prove anything. I already have. Your foundation's records have been delivered to select law enforcement agencies and media outlets. By morning, your entire operation will be exposed. Marcus lunged suddenly, a hidden knife flashing in his hand. Ethan sidestepped effortlessly, using Marcus's momentum to slam him into a concrete pillar. 15 years of naval intelligence work, Ethan explained conversationally as Marcus struggled to breathe. Did Chloe ever mention that, or was she too busy planning my murder to discuss my resume? She never loved you, Marcus gasped, blood trickling from his mouth. She was always mine. Then you deserve each other, Ethan replied, his voice flat. The question is, will her love survive when everything else is gone? Ethan zip-tied Marcus's hands and left him slumped against the pillar. On his way out, he placed a phone call to David. It's done. Proceed with Phase 3. At the Hayes mansion, Chloe paced nervously, waiting for word from Marcus. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight, then 1, then 2. At precisely 3:07 a.m., every light in the house suddenly blazed on. Every television, every computer screen, even the digital picture frames, all activated simultaneously, displaying the same image, security footage of Chloe and Eleanor pushing Ethan and Leo over the railing of the yacht. Chloe screamed, backing away from the nearest screen. Eleanor emerged from her room, equally horrified. What's happening? She demanded. Before Chloe could respond, their phones chimed with simultaneous text messages. Did you really think I wouldn't have cameras on my own boat? The game has changed. Check the news in the morning. As promised, the morning brought chaos. Marcus Thorne's arrest made national headlines. Money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit murder. His foundation was exposed as a criminal enterprise. His political aspirations destroyed in an instant. More shocking to Boston society was the connected investigation into the presumed deaths of Ethan and Leo Vance, now classified as attempted murder, with Chloe Hayes and Eleanor Prescott named as persons of interest. By noon, the police were at the Hayes mansion with search warrants. By evening, mother and daughter were being questioned in separate rooms at Boston Police Headquarters, their carefully constructed alibis crumbling under the weight of evidence. From a secure location, I watched the news coverage with David and Nadia. "Daddy," Leo called from the playground, visible through the window. "Come see my castle." "Be right there, buddy," I called back, my expression softening momentarily before hardening again as I turned to David. "Are we ready for the final phase?" David nodded grimly. "Everything is in place. But, Ethan, Robert, are you sure about this? It's extreme, even considering what they did." "They tried to kill my son," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "There's no punishment extreme enough for that." Chapter 7. Rising from the depths, the legal system moved with unusual speed in the case against Marcus Thorne, Chloe Hayes, and Eleanor Prescott. Overwhelming evidence, public outrage, and persistent media coverage created pressure for swift justice. Marcus, hoping to mitigate his sentence, turned on Chloe and Eleanor, providing detailed testimony about their conspiracy. His cooperation earned him little mercy, 25 years without possibility of parole. For Chloe and Eleanor, the situation was even more dire. Their trial, scheduled to begin in 3 weeks, carried potential life sentences. Released on exorbitant bail while awaiting trial, they found themselves pariahs in a society that had once embraced them. Meanwhile, a legal conundrum captivated experts nationwide. If Ethan and Leo Vance were alive, where were they? Without their testimony or bodies, the case against Chloe and Eleanor largely rested on circumstantial evidence and Marcus's self-serving testimony. I, still known to the world as Robert Caldwell, monitored these developments from my new headquarters, a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. Leo, adapting with the resilience of childhood, had embraced our new life, though he often asked when they could stop pretending and go home. "Soon, buddy," I promised. Though home would never again be the mansion in Boston. 3 days before the trial was set to begin, I implemented the next phase of my plan. A package was delivered to Agent Anya Sharma, the lead prosecutor on the case, containing irrefutable evidence of Ethan and Leo's survival, their current identities, and a sworn affidavit detailing the attempted murder. Simultaneously, similar packages arrived at the offices of major news networks. The revelation exploded across headlines nationwide. Vance resurrection. Presumed dead businessman and son alive under new identities. At the prosecutor's office, Agent Sharma studied the evidence with mounting excitement. This was the smoking gun that would ensure convictions. She immediately filed motions to compel testimony from Ethan/Robert. In his penthouse, I fielded calls from David, who monitored the legal proceedings. "They're demanding you testify, Robert," David reported. "Sharma is pushing hard." "As expected," I replied. "Set up the meeting, but under my conditions." 2 days later, I sat across from Agent Sharma in a secure room at the federal building. My appearance had been further altered. Different hair, glasses, subtle makeup to change my facial structure, just enough to maintain my Robert Caldwell identity while allowing hints of Ethan Vance to show through. "Mr. Vance, or do you prefer Caldwell now?" Agent Sharma began, her eyes sharp. "Caldwell, please. Ethan Vance is legally dead, and I prefer to keep it that way. That complicates matters. Your testimony would be incredibly compelling." "This case will proceed without my physical testimony," I interrupted firmly. "I've provided sworn statements, evidence, everything you need for convictions. My son, and I will not appear in court." "May I ask why?" "My son has been traumatized enough. I won't subject him to a trial where he'd have to face the woman who tried to kill him. As for me, I have my reasons." Agent Sharma studied me carefully. "You're planning something, aren't you? Something beyond the legal system." My expression remained neutral. "Justice takes many forms, Agent Sharma. I'm sure you understand that." Whatever you're planning will occur after your case is concluded. I've given you everything you need for justice within the system. What happens beyond that is not your concern. As I left the meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from an anonymous number. Please don't do this. We need to talk. I smiled coldly. Chloe was getting desperate. That evening, against David's advice, I agreed to meet Chloe at a public park. I arrived early, securing vantage points and escape routes, habits from my former life that now served my new purpose. Chloe appeared at precisely the appointed time, looking haggard and afraid. A shadow of the confident woman who had planned my murder. Almost didn't recognize you, she said as she sat beside me on the bench. The changes are significant. That was the point. How did you survive? The water was freezing. You're miles offshore. I was always better prepared than you gave me credit for, Chloe. I replied, my voice flat. Always more capable. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, Robert, whatever you're calling yourself now. I know what I did was unforgivable, but please, if any part of you ever loved me, don't. I cut her off, my voice deadly quiet. Don't pretend this is about emotion. You need something from me, so get to it. The prosecutor offered a deal. 15 years if I testify against my mother. She claims the plan was all Eleanor's idea, that I was coerced. And was it? Chloe looked away. Does it matter? No one forced me to push you and Leo over that railing. I did that. But Ethan, 15 years. I'll be an old woman when I get out. If you get out, I corrected her. The deal hasn't been finalized, has it? That's why you're here. You need me to tell them I won't testify against you specifically, that I didn't see who pushed me, that it could have been only my mother. I laughed then, a sound devoid of humor. You tried to kill our son, and now you want me to help you avoid responsibility? He's alive. You both survived. Please, Ethan, you know what Leo asked me yesterday. I continued, ignoring her pleas. He wanted to know why his mommy wanted him to die. How do I answer that, Chloe? Tears streamed down Chloe's face. I wasn't thinking clearly. Marcus and Mother, they convinced me. Stop lying, I said softly. I have recordings of every conversation, every plan you made, every celebration after you thought we were dead. I know exactly who you are. Then why meet me at all? Why not just let the trial proceed? I stood, looking down at her with cold detachment. Because I wanted you to know that what happens next isn't just the justice system at work. It's me, Chloe. Everything that's coming, the complete destruction of your life, your future, your very identity, it's all by my design. What are you going to do? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Watch the news tomorrow, then the next day, then the next. You spent a year planning my death. I've spent months planning something far worse for you. Your living death. As I walked away, Chloe called after me, her voice breaking. You can't do this. Whatever you're planning, it won't bring you peace. I paused, turning slightly. Peace was never the objective. Justice was, and justice, Chloe, is ruthless. Chapter 8. Torrents of truth. The morning of the trial, Boston woke to shocking news. Detailed financial records showing Chloe Hayes had been siphoning money from children's charities connected to Sentinel Security for years, even before meeting Marcus Thorne. The evidence suggested a pattern of behavior predating her marriage to me. By midday, additional revelations emerged about Eleanor Prescott's psychiatric practice. Allegations from former patients claiming she had manipulated vulnerable individuals for financial gain, sometimes in collaboration with her daughter. Inside the courtroom, Chloe and Eleanor watched their carefully constructed lives disintegrate. Their attorneys scrambled to address the new allegations, only to be blindsided by more damning evidence with each passing hour. From his secure location, I orchestrated the systematic destruction of their reputations. David had assembled a team of investigators who had spent months uncovering every secret, every misdeed, every skeleton in their closets. The prosecution is incorporating the new evidence, David reported. Sharma is going for maximum sentences for both of them. Good, I replied, watching Leo build a Lego structure on the living room floor. What about the offshore accounts? frozen as of an hour ago. The seizure orders went through without a hitch. The trial proceeded with unprecedented speed and media attention. Marcus Thorne's testimony, combined with the yacht surveillance footage and the mountain of newly discovered evidence, left little room for doubt. On the third day, Chloe's attorney approached the prosecution with a desperate plea deal offer. Agent Sharma, following my guidance delivered through carefully placed intermediaries, rejected it outright. "No deals," she told the defense attorney, her voice firm. "Your client tried to murder a child. She'll serve every day of whatever sentence the judge imposes." By the trial's end, both Chloe and Eleanor had been convicted on all counts. The judge, noting the unconscionable betrayal and cold-blooded calculation involved, sentenced Chloe to 30 years and Eleanor to 25. As they were led from the courtroom, Chloe caught sight of a man observing from the back row, Robert Caldwell, watching her impassively as she was taken away in handcuffs. That evening, I received a visit from Agent Sharma at my penthouse. "Justice was served today," she noted, accepting the offered glass of wine. "Though I suspect your version of justice is just beginning." "The legal system did its part," I acknowledged. "But some crimes deserve more comprehensive consequences." "I'm not sure I want to know what you mean by that." "Plausible deniability is a valuable commodity in your position, Agent Sharma." She studied me carefully. "The financial revelations, the patient testimonies against Eleanor, that was all you're doing, wasn't it? You've been systematically dismantling their lives beyond what the law could accomplish." I neither confirmed nor denied her assertion. "I believe in thoroughness." "And what about your son, Leo? How is he coping with all this?" "Children are remarkably resilient, especially when protected from unnecessary trauma. He knows his mother did something terrible and won't be part of our lives anymore. The details can wait until he's older." "And you? Will Ethan Vance ever return from the dead?" I shook my head. Ethan Vance served his purpose. Robert Caldwell has a promising future ahead, one without the complications of a resurrection. After Agent Sharma departed, I reviewed the latest reports from my investigators. Chloe and Eleanor had been transferred to separate federal facilities. Marcus Thorne was already serving his sentence at a maximum security prison in Colorado. "The financial transfers are complete," David confirmed over our secure line. "Everything has been redirected according to your instructions." "And the other matter?" "In progress. The first disclosure happens tomorrow." I nodded, a grim satisfaction settling over me. "Perfect." The next morning, inmates at the Federal Correctional Facility where Chloe was being held received an unusual notification. Substantial deposits had been made to the commissary accounts of every prisoner, except Chloe Hayes. A note accompanied the facility-wide announcement, courtesy of Chloe Hayes' victims. "She believes herself better than you. Show her she's wrong." Similar arrangements had been made at Eleanor's facility. Within hours, mother and daughter, separated by hundreds of miles, found themselves targets of coordinated hostility from their fellow inmates. Meanwhile, a series of anonymous donations appeared in Leo's name to children's organizations nationwide. Millions of dollars dedicated to protecting vulnerable youth, particularly those affected by parental betrayal. "Is this part of the plan?" David asked when I showed him the donation confirmations. "Something constructive should come from this tragedy," I replied. "Leo will never know the complete truth about his mother, but someday he'll understand that his survival helped others." That night, as Leo slept peacefully in his new bedroom, I stood by the penthouse window overlooking the city lights. The vengeance I had orchestrated was comprehensive, meticulous, and utterly without mercy, just like the betrayal that had precipitated it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You've won. They're destroyed. When does it end?" I deleted the message without responding. For Chloe, Eleanor, and Marcus, there would be no end to the consequences. Only a lifetime of suffering proportionate to what they had planned for me and my son. Justice in Ethan Vance's world was indeed ruthless. Chapter 9, New Tides. 1 year later, Robert Caldwell had become a respected figure in financial circles, known for his shrewd investments and generous philanthropic activities. His security consulting firm, Phoenix Protection, specialized in helping high-net-worth individuals safeguard themselves against elaborate threats, particularly those from trusted insiders. Leo, now 6, had adapted fully to their new life. He attended an exclusive private school under the name Leo Caldwell, where he was known as a bright, somewhat reserved boy with a particular talent for swimming. "He's thriving," Nadia reported during her monthly assessment. She had transitioned from nanny to household manager, overseeing Leo's education and well-being while I, as Robert, built our new life. The nightmares have stopped completely. He hasn't mentioned his mother in over 2 months. She glanced at her notes. In Dr. Winters' evaluation, she believes he's processing the trauma appropriately. She recommends continuing the current approach, honest answers to his questions without volunteering disturbing details. I nodded, satisfied. And the security protocols? Maintained rigorously. The school staff remain vigilant, though there's been no suspicious activity. Nadia hesitated before adding, "He asked about the ocean yesterday, whether we could visit the beach this summer." A shadow crossed my face. The ocean held complicated associations now, but I wouldn't allow my son's life to be limited by my fears. Make the arrangements, I decided. Somewhere private. Martha's Vineyard, perhaps. Later that day, I received my regular update from David about our ongoing monitoring of Chloe, Eleanor, and Marcus. Thorne was hospitalized again, David reported. 3rd attack since his incarceration. He'll recover, but his request for protective custody was denied again. And the women? Eleanor has been moved to the psychiatric ward. The isolation and harassment triggered a legitimate breakdown. As for Chloe, David paused. She attempted suicide last week. Unsuccessful, obviously. I absorbed this information without visible reaction. Maintain the protocols. No direct intervention, but continued monitoring. For how long? Indefinitely. That evening, as I helped Leo with a science project, a model of ocean currents, my secure phone rang with a call from Agent Sharma. "I thought you should know," she said without preamble. "There's been a development in the Vance case." I tensed. What kind of development? Chloe Hayes is offering new information. Claims there were others involved in the conspiracy beyond the 3 convicted parties. "Is there any evidence supporting this?" "None that we've found," Agent Sharma replied. "It appears to be a desperate attempt to leverage a sentence reduction, but I wanted to warn you. She's specifically claiming that Robert Caldwell was part of the original conspiracy, who then double-crossed the others." I considered this new complication. How seriously is this being taken? Not very. Her credibility is non-existent, and there's no evidence connecting Robert Caldwell to any conspiracy. Still, there may be some preliminary investigation. "I appreciate the warning," I said. "Keep me informed of any developments." After ending the call, I joined Leo in the living room, where the boy was watching a documentary about marine life. "Daddy," Leo said without looking away from the screen, "do you think fish remember things like people do?" "That's an interesting question," I replied, sitting beside him. "Some fish have surprising memory capabilities, though different from humans." "Why do you ask?" Leo shrugged. "I was just thinking about memories. Sometimes I remember things that don't make sense." I felt a chill. "Like what, buddy?" "Like, sometimes I remember Mom saying mean things, but then I think maybe it was just a bad dream." Leo turned to face his father, his big eyes searching mine. "Was Mom a bad person? Is that why she's gone?" I sat beside my son, choosing my words carefully. "Your mother made some very bad choices that hurt people. She's paying the consequences for those choices now. Will I ever see her again?" "No, Leo. That part of our life is over." The boy nodded, seeming relieved, rather than saddened. "I like our life now better anyway, Daddy." Leo's observations struck me deeply. Was I happier now? The rage that had fueled my elaborate revenge had subsided, replaced by a vigilant determination to protect my son and our new life. Perhaps that was a form of happiness, or at least peace. The next morning, I met with my legal team to address Chloe's new allegations. Though the claims were unlikely to gain traction, I wouldn't leave anything to chance. "We need contingencies," I told David afterward. If there's even a remote possibility of connecting Robert Caldwell to Ethan Vance, we need to be prepared. We've maintained the separation meticulously, David assured me. The surgical alterations, the documentation, all of it is bulletproof. Nevertheless, prepare the secondary protocol. If necessary, Robert Caldwell can disappear as thoroughly as Ethan Vance did. That evening, I reviewed the financial reports from the remains of Sentinel Security Solutions. After the scandal, the company had been restructured under new leadership, with a significant portion of the profits directed to a trust for Leo, accessible when he turned 25. Everything had been meticulously arranged to secure my son's future, regardless of what happened to me as Robert. Multiple identities, offshore accounts, trusted guardians with clear instructions. Leo would never be vulnerable again. A notification appeared on my secure tablet. Chloe's latest appeal had been denied. Her allegations against Robert Caldwell had been dismissed as fabrications from a desperate convict. I closed the notification, feeling not triumph, but a quiet finality. The chapter was closing. The vengeance was complete. 3 days later, I took Leo to a private beach on Martha's Vineyard. The boy approached the ocean cautiously at first, then with growing confidence as his father stayed close beside him. "The water's not scary," Leo declared, splashing in the gentle waves. "No, it's not," I agreed. "Not when you respect it and understand it." As we built an elaborate sand fortress at the water's edge, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The betrayal, the fall, the calculated revenge, all of it had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. The fortress complete, Leo looked up at his father with pride. "Will it last, Daddy?" I gazed at the sand structure, knowing the tide would eventually reclaim it. "Nothing lasts forever, buddy. But we've made it strong. It will stand against a lot before it falls." Later, watching the sunset from our beach house deck, I received a final text from David. Confirmed. CH transferred to maximum security after latest incident. YH undergoing psychiatric evaluation. Prognosis poor. MT denied medical parole. All monitoring systems functioning. Assets secure. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Leo was pointing excitedly at dolphins playing in the distance. "Look, Daddy. Remember you told me dolphins know things about the sea that humans never will." "I remember," I replied, smiling at my son's flawless recall. "What's the most important thing they know?" Leo considered the question before answering. "I think they know that survival isn't just about being strong or smart. It's about adaptation, becoming what you need to be when the waters change." Leo nodded solemnly, as if the answer made perfect sense to his 6-year-old mind. "Like us, right? We adapted." "Exactly like us," I agreed, pulling my son close as the dolphins continued their graceful dance against the setting sun. The fortress they had built would soon be claimed by the tide. But Ethan Vance and Leo, now the Caldwells, had built something far more enduring, a new life secured by the ruthless justice that had transformed them both. Some betrayals can never be forgiven. Some debts can only be paid in full measure. And some men, when pushed into the depths, don't drown. They emerge as something far more dangerous than what went under. The ocean knows this truth. So do those who survive its cold embrace. This story, it's been a part of me for so long, a shadow lurking just beneath the surface. Now, bringing it to light, I wonder, if you found yourself in my shoes, facing such a cold, calculated betrayal from the people you loved and trusted most, how far would you go for justice? Would you rebuild? Or would you seek an equally ruthless vengeance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one.